Welcome to Sponsored Post Podcast, behind the lens of how influential content is made. I am Justin Moore. I'm the founder and CEO of Trending Family, which is an influencer marketing agency that launches campaigns with family-friendly influencers. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Gary Zucker, who is the co-founder of Group RFZ, which helps provide ROI measurement solutions for brands and agencies that run top-of-funnel influencer campaigns. Welcome, Gary.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Justin.
So why don't we start off with a little bit about your background? It seems like you've been, involved in market research for a while. And so what got you interested in measuring influencer campaigns?
Yeah, it's like any of those business questions, Justin, you sort of just fall into things and you meet the right people and things just click. So, looking at my career, I've been involved in research for quite some time, but on various ends, but always sort of cutting edge technology. And many years ago, a couple business partners of mine at previous companies, we looked at sort of, again, being researchers, it's all about doing things the right way that you can stand behind. You have facts and figures, not like a gut feel. And we looked at what was happening in the world of content and influencer marketing. And we said, you know what, we can do a better job than the solutions on the market today. So it was really just sort of taking what I know from previous industries and looking at this really exciting growing industry and trying to make sure that, you're using the best practices to make sure that it has a long-term runway per se.
Right. And so how does measuring influencer marketing differ from other industries or verticals that you've worked in?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference, Justin, is that with influencer marketing, it's shifting from a hobby to a business, and it's shifting really rapidly. So we have to train all parties, the influencers, the consultants, the agencies, the tech providers, and even consumers, that with a business, there's certain rules of engagement that are going to help everybody succeed. So to me, that biggest challenge is how do we help everyone involved? Because there's a lot of dollars being funneled here, and you can't just do it on a whim, which, a lot of people today, they'll agree to do something, an influencer, and you never hear from them again. So processes in place, measurement, agreements, contracts, all that good stuff that goes along to any, maturing business.
Walk me through the Group RFZ process. So let's say I'm a CPG company who sells toothpaste and I want to run an influencer campaign and see kind of what impact it had. So give me like your elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, you mentioned toothpaste. We do work with a large company in the toothpaste arena. So let me create a fictitious example to walk you through, because I think that makes sense. So let's say I'm a toothpaste company, traditional, I've been around a while. My CMO has come to me and said, you know what, I'm reading all these articles that Justin and everybody else is publishing for the last year, and I think we need to get on the bandwagon, right? It needs to be part of our marketing mix. It's a very common theme that we hear when we talk to brands today. So I'm pretty knowledgeable in digital marketing, but my CMO says, hey, here's some budget, make it happen. And if it works, we'll push dollars towards influencer, right? Everybody's sort of having that same dialogue today. It's important too, again, as a frame of reference, sort of taking a step back, when you measure, what we try to do is we ask clients today, and I was just on the phone with a company in the UK today, a clothing company, hey, are you in influencer marketing? Where do you focus your efforts? Top of the funnel, mid, lower funnel? And really 99% of the time when I ask, brands directly, okay, great, you're doing top of the funnel influencer marketing. How do you measure success? And I always hear the same answers, which is, well, we either run this directly or we partner with an agency and we're getting reach and engagement. And they may say, you know what, my goal for this campaign is to generate awareness, maybe understand some of brand attributes and understand purchase intent, right? Very common top of the funnel. And when we ask them that, reach and engagement, how does it work? Is it working for you? Is it helping you determine success? Most people don't know what to say. And I think it's, again, because it's an industry in its infancy. So what we always try first and foremost is to educate the customer and say, great, you're running top of the funnel. What should you be measuring, right? How can we help you so you look good in front of your boss? And most importantly, you're seeing an ROI, on that return. So that's really where we start, a discussions from a pitch perspective is let's understand the business. What are they trying to accomplish? What should they be measuring to help determine success? And then it really sort of extrapolates. So we can go much deeper into this about how can you measure success today? What are those options and how to best position what you're doing so you can prove your case? And then again, influencer marketing is not the all be end marketing. It's going to kill everything else. I've heard this story countless times in my career, but it is becoming a major factor in that marketing mix, and knowing when to use it, how to use it, and how to show that it's working is just huge.
Interesting. So how does it work? I'm assuming that you field surveys on the platform that the influencer is posting on. So you are exposing an audience prior to the campaign, during and after the campaign, and see if there's like a difference in awareness or brand lift or things like that. Is that kind of how it goes?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. So let's start sort of research 101, and you don't have to be an expert. So for example, when it comes to top of the funnel, there's a term that everybody uses. When I say everybody, these are the P&Gs of the world, the Unilevers of the world, the largest research companies. The term is called brand lift. And brand lift is a tried and true approach to measuring the effectiveness of any type of content that's targeted at the top of the funnel. So a commercial on television, those tend to be top of the funnel, right? It's about building the brand. It's all about giving you a feeling, an emotion, a connection to a brand. When you hear something on the radio, when you see a digital advertisement in the old days, the first generation of digital advertising with AOL, where it's about building the brand. So whenever that goal is to affect top of the funnel metrics, reach, engagement, views, clicks, right? All that behavioral data, it doesn't really correlate with how do I show success. So what we do, and again, so with influencer marketing, in order to understand, again, that toothpaste example, my goal is to generate awareness, how do consumers feel about the brand? Would they purchase it? Reach and engagement won't help you answer that question. You somehow need to understand, okay, people who saw this campaign versus a control group, how much did it lift awareness, the campaign? People exposed to the campaign, how much did it change favorability? Most large brands have very specific KPIs. They measure brand health. How does it align, influencer marketing with larger marketing goals? And then finally, maybe purchase intent. So the fundamentals of any brand lift exercise, you need to engage with two groups that are exposed to the content and a control group. And it's a survey process. So the difference between behavioral metrics, this is all done after the fact, right? You have to be exposed. So there's no pre-post. That's sort of a different marketing exercise. Sometimes that's used with traditional advertising. So the way our process works, or any brand lift, let's start with how do you measure brand lift for influencer marketing? You need to recruit individuals that you hope are in that exposed audience and a control audience. And then you take them through a very focused online survey, and then you compare the differences. So you're isolating, in a perfect world, how is influencer marketing affecting my, KPIs, awareness, purchase intent, favorability, could be trust. The industry as a whole, what's happened, and this is where we got involved, is because influencer marketing is a niche market, right? You're not engaging 10, 20, 30, 50 million people like TV. You may have a campaign where you're only engaging 500,000 people or 250,000 people. Given that small audience, the traditional ways of measuring brand lift, organically re-engaging with people who saw that post on Instagram or saw that video, you can't do that today, right? The numbers are just too small. So the industry essentially, and the right way they did it is they came up with a simulated process. So I'll give you an example. The biggest companies out there today, very good quality, respected companies, the only way for them to measure brand lift with influencer marketing is they recruit members from a market research panel. They screen them to say, okay, are you on Instagram? Let's use the toothpaste example. Are you on Instagram? Are you active on social media? Do you brush your teeth? Are you aware of these brands? And then they randomly assign you to the exposed audience or that control. If you're in the exposed audience, they then show that influencer's post or that influencer's story. So that's sort of the de facto standard of how people try to measure brand lift. I would say the biggest breakthrough that we've been able to accomplish is for the exposed audience, it's truly people that are aware and connected with the influencer. So your fundamental question is, my marketing mix dollars, right? I'm trying to measure how is this campaign affected. You need to make sure that the audience frame, right, that sample frame is actually people who are aware of the influencer and not just pushed into an audience because they brush their teeth and they're active on social media. So we truly engage with those influencers that you're partnering with. And that sort of box of approval, that check of approval is just something the industry didn't know you could actually do, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So would you say that the majority of your clients are more traditional, especially with respect to doing influencer campaigns, and they really are mostly only doing brand awareness campaigns? Or are you also engaging with clients who are a little bit more savvy and maybe they've done things lower down the funnel? You know, they've done more kind of like performance marketing tactics where they've given influencers promo codes or things like that their followers can redeem, where you do have a little bit more attribution in terms of sales and site visits and things like that?
You know, that's a question we get all the time. The holy grail, right? Attribution. How can I assign $1 here, generates revenue? I've not found that solution today. I've seen some really good quality companies trying to reach it. Our expertise lies at the top of the funnel because that's where the measurement gap is just huge. Mid to lower funnel, where there may be affiliate links, right? There may be swipe ups, sort of call to action. There's some good companies and processes in place today, so you can get the answers. So we don't focus on mid to lower funnel. We're exclusively answering the what if at the top of the funnel today.
So do you have like a formula or a criteria of the types of clients that would be best suited for this? Or walk me through the sample size. That's one thing I'm curious about, is like, how do you determine whether a study is statistically significant, given that you mentioned that the audience sizes are significantly less than some of these other market research brand lift studies that these traditional advertisers have fielded in the past?
So you have a lot of questions. So let's break that up into the components and sort of tackle them one by one. So number one, who is an ideal client for running a brand lift exercise, right? Are they sophisticated clients? Are they newbies? What I would tell you is that doesn't really matter. We need to make sure that the client understands. Like, we have clients that are really savvy. They pull in their internal market research department to make sure that, we are experts in what we do. And then we have other clients that don't even know what brand lift is. They know what they need to get out of it. Like, I need to show my boss that this increased awareness. I mean, literally, they're that new to the industry. It's their first project. So that would be step one. Step two, in terms of the vertical and what you're trying to uncover, awareness is very common, right? And influencer marketing is very powerful from an awareness objective. But we also have some clients, like we had a food company, and they're like, well, we're a universal brand. Everybody has us in their cabinets. But what we really are trying to understand is perception. So awareness is common, in terms of objectives of the campaign. Perception shift, is the campaign changing the perception of the brand? Believe it or not, healthcare and insurance, we're starting to do a lot of work there. The number one, there are some rules and regulations, is trust, right? Trust in the brand, financial services. Again, KPIs that the brand is measured upon, purchase intent. So everything is customized. There's really no cookie cutter approach. We always try to understand, okay, what are you doing? Can we help you measure it? Let's understand how we make you successful. So that's answer number one. Number two, audience size, statistical significance, base sizes, a lot of big, heavy math numbers there. So let's break that down into components. So with our unique approach, again, where that exposed audience is comprised of people who are truly aware of the influencer, we can actually run a study with an influencer audience as low as 50,000 people, which is amazing, because most people are like, oh, I thought I had to go in the millions. And the answer is you don't have to. We've been able to design a methodology that works. Now, what is a typical campaign? A typical campaign could be anywhere. We have some clients that are using one or two influencers, others that are using a dozen or two, and some campaigns that are in the hundreds of influencers. Most clients want to measure at a campaign level. They don't need influencer by influencer comparison. So we just want to get a representative sample of what the influencer base looks like. For example, we recently did a very large study with a platform provider of ours, and it was all about nutrition bars. And they had macro, mid, and micro influencers. And we took a sampling of influencers in each of those categories. That was the sample frame we were pulling from. again, you can be very niche in terms of the audience. You can blend influencers. That's all customized. So that answers that question about reach. Your last question about, well, what's a valid base size? Typically, at a minimum, we try to get about 150 individuals in the survey from each of those audiences. So a total of 300 people, 150 people in the exposed audience, and 150 people in the control. Now, that number can go up depending on a client's internal requirements. Some clients, believe it or not, want to take it lower. There is no right or wrong answer. You just want to go in with your eyes open and knowing what are you trying to measure, and then we can make the recommendations on what a comfortable base size is. But you don't want to be talking with 10 people or 20 people. That's like a focus group, very directional in nature.
Do you need access, like back-end access to the influencers' Facebook or their Instagram or something in order to field these surveys that they're sending to their audiences?
So that's a good question in terms of how we get the influencer involvement, Justin. In the old days, when we first started our company, we were measuring content marketing. Now, as you know, with content marketing, you can place a pixel on that article or on that video. When it comes to influencer marketing, there is no pixel, right? So in an influencer campaign, yes, we are actually working with the influencers to share their audience. And the way that works is very similar to like white labeling, right? Where a brand works with an influencer. So in the aggregate level, the influencer is sharing their audience with our Facebook manager account. That's sort of one component. And then we are customizing a recruitment campaign to target that audience within the Facebook ecosystem, right? We're talking mainly about Facebook and Instagram at the moment. But yes, their participation is required. And I would say, to be honest with you, that's probably been one of the largest learning curves that we've been really solving is, again, a lot of these influencers, it was a hobby for them, right? And it still is a hobby, and they're trying to make it into a business. So making it easy for them to understand, well, why are you asking me to share my audience? And do you have access to my personal information? So we were very transparent with them, explaining to them, hey, we'd like to invite you to participate in this process. Here's why it's good for you. Here's why it's good for the brand. Here's what we're doing with your data. Again, with all the privacy, GDPR and California and what's happening and why it's happening, being upfront and truthful on how this works and what we can see and what we can't see. They're very agreeable once you explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it. But you've got to educate them. It's really important.
Super interesting. So, I mean, brands have been doing lift studies for years. I mean, like you mentioned, and to kind of determine the effectiveness of their advertising. And so why do you think that they haven't been doing this all along with their influencer campaigns, right? I mean, it seems like there are still tons of articles about brands kind of doubting the effectiveness of working with influencers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple components, I would say. One component, it depends on the sophistication of the brand. So I'll give you a couple examples. Sometimes we'll work with companies and they say, I want to run a brand lift study. And the deeper you dig into background, you'll understand. And, a lot of these are, Fortune 10, Fortune 20 companies. They have been running brand lift studies in other channels for decades, right? TV, radio, print, digital media. Influencer is just another channel. But the reason they've been hesitant in influencer marketing is they know of the pitfalls, right? So if a big company, a top 10 Fortune 500 CPG company is running a brand lift study today, they know that they can't engage organically with the influencer's audience. They have to use this simulated. So they're like, I'm not testing the channel. I'm not going to fund it. Those clients we love because once we educate them on what's possible, all of a sudden they say, oh, we insist on brand lift when we can do it correctly. So that's one type of customer. Other customers we run into, mid to smaller companies, direct to consumer companies that are new, that, they understand brand lift, but they're not experts in it. They actually take everything for face value, which is dangerous, right? So they're running brand lift today. They have an answer, but are they really testing the influencer channel? So it's a different discussion with them. So again, I think the key is, why haven't they been running brand lift? It depends on the experience of the client. It depends on, are they asking the right questions of their vendors, right? We should all be doing that in industry, is help educate me on how you do this and why you do this and what the benefits are and the drawbacks. So again, a lot about education. The industry is in that vertical today. And then the last element is cost, right? In any industry, what should we be budgeting for measurement? And to the best of my knowledge, after talking with people, it's anywhere between 5 and 10% of that overall budget, right? That seems to be very common. So influencer measurement is not free. I think people need to understand that the industry is maturing. Measurement provides value. So most of our work is mid to larger campaigns. It's hard to justify spending money on a very small influencer campaign when your overall budget for everything is $5,000, right? How do you pay for measurement? So expertise level, knowledge level, and what is the budget of the campaign? Those are all factors that go into it.
After evaluating all of these different campaigns, have you been able to identify any common threads? Like the most successful campaigns all have this certain characteristic or something?
I would say that we've got some ideas, but it is definitely learning in process, right? And we're learning every day and changing that. But a couple things I could say that are rising to the top. First of all, using the right channel for the objective of the campaign. You're not force feeding a round peg into a square hole just because you're comfortable with that. For example, Instagram is huge. It is still large in everybody's mind, but when should you use it? When should you not use it? If you think about the medium of Instagram, right? It's very fast. It's very visual. To me, personally, I think that's the right channel for an awareness play. The other one I mentioned too, so CPG, travel, entertainment, those are all areas that we've been, seeing a tremendous growth in, but also healthcare and financial. But again, the theme there is trust, right? It's all about, that imagery. When it's more the objective of the campaign, let's say the objective is educating their audience, right? Well, Instagram is not really the best channel for that. It's more video, more YouTube is a good platform for education, or ratings and reviews, right? That's much more of a audio, visual reading. So YouTube is a good place. So I think just common sense themes of what is your objective, start with that, and which channel caters to that kind of objective.
Have you tried to do measurements outside of social media? So let's say a brand is doing a larger marketing campaign that includes broadcast and out of home and print, and influencer marketing is just one component of that. And the client is saying, well, I want to see the impact that influencer marketing is having relative to these other channels that I'm running. So have you done anything like that?
Yeah, personally, we have not. And there's some companies experimenting in that space. It just gets muddy pretty quickly, right? So if you think about it, if I'm running a larger marketing initiative and I have a TV element, a radio, a digital content, and influencer marketing, how can I sync everything up, right? So forget privacy, right? Let's say that was not an issue at all today. How do I have a single unique identifier that's tracking that element, right? That's one challenge. The other challenge is what's the size, right? If you think about attribution, you got to think of your ending number. So a great example, let's say you're a phone company, T-Mobile, a Verizon, an AT&T is an example, and you're trying to figure out my overall marketing mix, what is yielding the best new customer acquisition, right? So if I start with my goal, which is customer acquisition, and I look at the funnel going up, I have to have an immense, right? Because not everybody's going to participate. You have a lot of fall off, you have unknowns. So I may have to start with a tracking size of 50 million people to get to a known entity at the end of the day. And remember, influencer marketing is small by numbers, so it doesn't play well into that. And then I think the other thing that, and this is my default answer, because I truly believe this, with attribution, there are so many unknowns. For example, if I see an influencer post about a new product coming out, and then I go to my next door neighbor, was it the influencer post that got me motivated? Was I talking to my neighbor and they said it? Did I see the TV commercial? So I think it's an evolving industry of pulling in various channels and learning. Will we get better? Absolutely. Will we ever reach that holy grail? I've got my doubts. I think you just need to make sure your compass is pointed in the right direction and things are making sense. Like, for example, if we can show that influencer marketing is generating awareness, well, awareness leads to what stage, right? Awareness leads to consideration, and consideration leads to purchase. So just be realistic, right? Use each platform realistically and don't have expectations. And this is part of what falls on you and I, Justin, is educating the market of, what should you expect from this? What's realistic? And There's been a lot of false articles about, the industry is falling, the sky is crazy, fraudulence, all that. Yes, those articles are good, but they bring the best out of all of us to help show why it works and how to do it correctly.
So speaking of influencer fraud, I've got to imagine that has driven some business for you in the last, 12, 18 months, and people concerned with, ensuring that their dollars are not going to waste. Should brands be as concerned as all of these kind of sky is falling articles are purporting?
Yeah, I love the sky is falling articles. I love it because it makes people actually think about what they're spending, and it really shows the pitfalls. Let me use a good one that just recently came out, right? Casper, right? Casper's going public. And part of their due diligence, they explained about they have no control over what influencers are saying. Great article. And the reason why it's a great article is it shows what not to do. So Casper, hey, let's get the influencers involved, but are they doing it the right way? If they would have partnered with, companies that are, so we're not involved in the influencer build, right? So platforms like the Mavericks, the Popular Pays, the Find Your Influences, companies like yourself, Justin, you can preempt those problems ahead of time. So Casper could have saved itself so much questions by thinking ahead of, okay, rather than signing up 10,000 influencers to post about my mattresses, let's go through a company that vets influencers, that gets rid of fraud. And there's really good quality companies that have solved that problem today. So I think that's step number one, is go in with your eyes open and ask the right questions of the partners that you choose. And then step two is we'll measure your success, right? Again, if your goal is to raise awareness, we know in our brand lift studies, we know we're talking to real people. These aren't bots. These aren't fake followers. These are real people. They're answering real surveys. So that's another validation step on top of taking the preemptive step of recruiting your influencers the right way and not just a massive broadcast, hey, we need help.
Right. So to bring up something you mentioned earlier, do you think that there's ever going to be standardization of measurement for influencer marketing? I've got to imagine that what you guys are doing is an attempt at that, right? I mean, it seems like there's been also some software companies that have also tried to accomplish that, but I'm not really sure how successful they've been. I mean, what are your thoughts on getting everyone to kind of speak the same language in this space?
Yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. But again, using other industries that have more mature 10, 15, 20 years around, I think the big players are essential, right? So the major CPG companies, the major platforms, sort of putting a stake in the ground saying, hey guys, we're all in this together. Success for one of us is success for all of us. Like the Mark Pritchards of the world at P&G, he makes some very bold statements, but they get people motivated given their spend with advertising. It may be painful in the short term to get there, but it helps. Like a lot of people ask us, do you have benchmarks and norms? Those are going to be crucial. We're working on that internally. But that doesn't really exist in a very predictable way with influencer marketing, right? It's a pretty new channel, right? It hasn't been around for decades and decades, and it's evolving weekly. You have new players popping up, new capabilities. So I think as we learn more, we talk to people, we go to trade shows, we argue, all those will start getting flushed out and will become more strict in using standards that other channels use to show what success looks like and how to measure it properly. But I was just, again, on the phone with a client this morning, and they said, we use this media company and they measure sentiment. And if you think about it, sentiment, social media listening tools, what is that really good for? People that love your product and people that hate your product, right? You've got to be willing to take that step and say, man, that company did the best job, or that product sucks.
Right.
But that's only a very small fragment of the entire market, right? So think of more data sets, more transparency. Those are the themes I think that'll start resonating to the top. And will we be there in 6 months to a year? No, but are we making progress and getting better every year? Yes.
What impact do you think Instagram hiding likes is going to have? I mean, I've got to imagine the companies who were leaning and relying solely on these vanity and engagement metrics are now perhaps going to think a little more critically about how they're going to measure things. I mean, obviously, influencers will still have access to that data in their back end, so they'll still be able to share it with companies who want it. But, just on the surface level, visiting an Instagram URL or someone's, photo, they're not going to be able to see that data forever anymore. So what are your thoughts on the impact that's going to have on influencer marketing in general?
Right. And I know everybody was panicked on all sides. The sky is falling, right? You've read those articles. But that was one key step for how much we love and we hate Facebook, right? There's always the positive and the negatives of things that they do. I think it was actually a phenomenal step because it gets you away from a popularity contest into really producing good content. And we know that content quality is what drives that long-term success of influencer marketing, right? And we're going from macro to micro influencers. So I see it as a great move for the industry by hiding likes. And especially, being selfishly from a measurement perspective, well, it's putting more pressure on measurement and proving ROI, right? Because one of those vanity metrics is the likes. And that was great when you had the Kim Kardashians of the world, but we don't live in that world anymore, right? We're really adapting to people who are like you and I can relate to. So I think it's a really positive move. It really brings measurement to the forefront and makes people think about that entire journey of influencer marketing from here's my business need. Okay, how do I create a campaign, create content, find influencers, and measure the success? And if it's upper funnel, again, brand lift is that tried and true, trusted approach to measuring that and feeling confident in your answers. It tells a story. In the world of market research, a good market researcher who's been in it for a while will tell you it's not about the quant metrics. It's about telling a story, right? At the end of the day, stories are what are memorable to our management team. So you need to be able to say, like, here's a story. Here's why this is successful. Have that supporting commentary around it. And that's more memorable than, oh, we achieved an X% growth here.
So super interesting. To kind of wrap this up, what do you think is next for the future of measurement and the future of influencer marketing? I mean, one thing in particular that I'm interested in is just this general cultural shift towards privacy. For example, Google, Chrome removing the ability to use cookies for advertisers within the next 2 years, or just generally consumers being a lot more conscious of like what data the apps that they're using are collecting of them and sending to advertisers or sending to those social media companies. Do you think that that's going to play a role here in how things are going to be shifting in the future?
Yeah, I mean, if I think of the crystal ball, and it's going to shift definitely as we go forward, what are the things, where I think are rising to the top? What are those things to keep cautious about? First of all, I think as an industry, influencer marketing, it's not voodoo science anymore, right? It is truly producing results. We know that. We have facts behind it. And so it's approaching that tipping point from a funding perspective. So as more investment moves into it, executive management is going to say, okay, show me proof of performance, right? I'm giving you dollars. Smart CMO, that's what they decide. So it's no more of this, when I think of the days of influencer marketing being a herd mentality, right? Oh, they're doing it, so I should be doing it. We're getting more mature, right? And with any mature industry, we want reliable, credible facts to back it up. So to me, proof and measurement, and remember, measurement's not free. There is a cost associated with that. So that's good news there, is because when they start asking for results, you can ask for more resources. So that's number one. Number two, when you talk about privacy, what's nice about running a brand lift exercise is you're doing it in the aggregate, right? And you're not recontacting people based on a cookie and asking them for their name and their number. So you're pretty well protected. I mean, believe it or not, parts of influencer marketing are well protected from a privacy. You still want to be cautious. You need to follow the regulations. But from a brand lift perspective, it's doing it at a very high level, very anonymous level. You're not sharing data. So when you think about first party data, like everything we've been talking about in these examples, Justin, we're staying within the Facebook ecosystem, right? Facebook doesn't allow you to export data. So you're already trying to stay with those highest standards possible. You're aligning with privacy guidelines. So I think that's crucial. There's a good path forward for influencer marketing. Other things like what's next, like I mentioned, norms and benchmarks. Any industry that matures wants that proof. So the ability, and we're working on that, to really say, well, how do you compare to your competitors? Like if I'm a CPG company and I'm using influencer marketing to generate awareness in the food category, am I doing as good, better, or worse? There's a lot of things that we're working on to help get that in place. a huge opportunity for influencer marketing in terms of going forward. We're also focused on the campaign running next week, but longitudinally, right? So not only building long-term relationships with influencers, we know that there's positive there, but measuring it longitudinally. So the ability to use measurement month to month or quarter to quarter to help improve the communication with the influencers, to guide them. We have countless examples of how longitudinal measurement is helping everyone. And it's just improving the quality of the content the influencers are producing. There's that love-hate relationship of how much control the brand should have over the influencer. I read articles every day about that. So it's helped everyone feel more comfortable with that. But those are the things I think that are helping, that I can see in the near term to really help improve the industry from everybody's perspective.
Super fascinating. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Gary. So how can people find out more about Group RFZ or contact you, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So the best initial one, our website, definitely visit us at Group RFZ. You can reach me, Gary Zucker, on LinkedIn, 303-209-3772. Be more than happy to answer any questions that came up on this podcast. And appreciate you inviting me, Justin. You guys are doing some really great work over there, and look forward to talking in the future.
Appreciate that. Absolutely. You've just listened to the Sponsored Post podcast with your host, Justin Moore. You can subscribe to hear more great interviews and episodes via Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Trending Family, you can visit trendingfamily.com. See you next time.